Hey guys, I'm Perla, and today in my podcast we will be talking about notes. Do you think notes are helpful? Today I have a guest here with me, which was actually one of the people I interviewed on about this topic.
Hi guys, I'm Leslie.
We will be discussing the different points of views on note taking. In my personal opinion, taking notes helps students with their studies. It helps them understand what they are reading by breaking it down in a much easier way, and it helps them learn what they're reading about. In my past experiences, note taking helped me in my world history class. I would write down all the important details, and when my teacher used to ask for a summary, all I would turn in were my notes because they were summarized. That would summarize the whole topic. But I would obviously rephrase the words. And that class was where notes came in very handy to me. On one of my sources by Margaret Kahns, she studied a girl named Shirley, which she could take notes on what she was learning about, and then those notes would be very useful to her. Shirley knew what to summarize what she was reading about, and that was what helped her a lot when she would have to write her essay. Margaret Kahn said that Shirley was able to use her notes as a source to help her understand what she was going to write about in a much easier way. Instead of having to rely on the original sources that were coming from the text that she was reading on, she got all her knowledge and what she wrote about from her notes. Leslie, what do you think about that?
I think that notes are really useful when it comes to studying because you look back at the specific points that were the most important in the lesson, and that's what helps you prepare for an exam or whatever you're gonna be tested on.
I agree with that. On one of my other sources by Theory Olive and Mari Laura, they're saying that notes is a lot less harder for kids to memorize. Sometimes teachers want their students to memorize the whole lecture, and they can't do that. And by taking notes, it's helping them organize the information they're getting from the lecture, and the notes are being served to them as a review for a test. The notes are basically a shorter review on the lecture, just the important points and details they're writing about. Leslie, have you ever experienced this before?
Well, if you write down the specific points, that's what's important because they're not gonna test you on the whole lecture. So your teacher is gonna be testing you on what was important. So if you're just writing down unimportant things, the notes aren't gonna help. But if you're writing down the specific points that were important, they'll help you in the exam.
Yes, that's exactly what they're saying. I agree that instead of the kids having to memorize the whole thing, they just have to memorize what they wrote down on their notes, which is what the important things, which is the most likely things that are going to be in the exam. One of my other resources by James C. Moore, he is trying to say, more like he is trying to get teachers to provide students with a reminder of what to take notes on. He says it will help students perform much better. And I agree with him there because in order for the teachers are the ones that make the test, so they know what's going to be on the test. And what he is saying makes sense because the teachers are telling you what to note on. They're practically telling you what's going to be on the test, and when you study for it, when you write your notes, you're going to be able to study for them, and on your test, well, you're going to do good because you're going to have what your notes are what the test is going to be on. Have you ever experienced this, Leslie, or do you agree with this or disagree with this?
I agree because if your teacher is telling you what the important parts are, that's what you're gonna write down. You're not gonna write down unnecessary information. So if you already know the important points, you just study those because that's what's gonna be on the test. If your teacher is telling you that that's important.
On the other hand, I had interviews. One by Wendy Sanchez, the other one by Edward Alaniz, and the other one by Leslie, the same person I'm talking to right now. They are all taking dual enrollment classes right now in college, and they are juniors in high school. One of the phrases Leslie said was that when she writes down notes, she can use them as a study guide, and it helps her understand the subject she's reading about in an easier way. Another thing she said was that she will be able to use her notes as a future reference to go back and check down what she wrote. Leslie, why did you say that?
Because it's true. Because the notes help me study. Because I know what I'm going to study. Because it was the important points throughout the class.
I agree with what you're saying. Wendy, which said something almost the same as what Leslie said. She said that by writing down notes, she can go back to them and it will help her save a lot more time. She said that by writing down the important factors, the notes just help her memorize the notes instead of the entire thing. And there she had a similarity with James. James said the same thing, that instead of the students having to memorize the whole lecture, they'll just memorize their notes. On the other hand, Edward Alanis said that writing down notes helps him figure out what's going on in the reading. That's very similar to what Leslie said. Leslie had said it helps her understand the subject better. So for these 3 students, it helps them figure out what they're reading about and saves them a lot more time. Something else he said was that writing down notes condenses pages worth of information into a paragraph or 2. And this will help him with condensing ideas. So when he's writing, he'll be able to condense all the information he's given into the idea that he thinks sums up all the information he gets. All the information he gets and all the information he's reading about. These 3 sources agree that note-taking is necessary and that note-taking is very helpful to them and has helped them throughout their life. On the other hand, a source that did not agree with the statement that notes are helpful was written by Walter Polk. He says that there is no reason that students should be told to take down notes, because he says that while students are taking down notes, it's limiting the attention they're giving towards their professor giving the lecture. That he says that the students are being so worried, they're worrying about what to write down in their notes instead of paying attention from the lecture. But I personally disagree with that, because if the students wouldn't be paying attention to the lecture, they wouldn't know what to write about. They're writing about what they're getting from the lecture. And I personally have never experienced that, because when I write down notes, I have to be paying attention to the lecture so that I can know what to write about. I'm not just going to write whatever the book is saying, because those aren't the notes that I need and the notes that are helpful to me. Leslie, do you agree with this or do you disagree?
I agree, because if you're paying attention...
You disagree, right? You disagree?
Yes.
Okay, why?
Well, if you're listening, you're writing down notes. So while you're writing down notes, you're thinking about what you're writing. So technically, if you weren't listening, you wouldn't be writing down notes.
Exactly. My last source, which contributed to the change of my opinion, which was by Wan Chen Chong, they stated that students take incomplete notes. They are saying that as long as, even if students take notes, but they don't take the appropriate notes, the notes aren't going to serve as a purpose to students and be helpful to them. They're saying that the students are just writing whatever. There's such thing as important details in the reading that are the ones that are the notes that are necessary and the ones that should be taken down on. They should elaborate on them. They state that if the students are poor note takers, they aren't going to be able to enjoy the full benefits the notes are going to bring them. For example, they're going to serve as a review and serve very helpful to them when it comes to writing an essay, studying, anything like that. Because appropriate note taking is necessary in order to help students achieve their goals on what they want to write about. I agree with what she is saying, because us as students, we can't just write down whatever notes we want. We have to write down the ones that we think are helpful and and we have to elaborate on each of them as much as we can in order for them to serve as a purpose to us in the future. We can't go writing whatever the textbook says or whatever we want to write because it's shorter. Leslie, do you agree with this?
Yes.
Why?
Because we're not going to write down everything the professor says or teacher. Like if he goes off topic, we're not going to write that down. We're going to write down the important parts that will benefit us when we're studying or using it to our benefit.
So now I think that not just writing notes down on whatever you learn about, but writing the appropriate notes, which are the main things being stated in the lecture, the important details are what's going to help students be successful. And the note taking will give students the opportunity to learn how to paraphrase what they read in their own words and how to condense information that's in textbooks like in 1 to 5 pages to a few paragraphs. So students, make sure you take down notes on the appropriate notes. Thank you.